It's getting juicy here on Big Blend Radio's third Friday Family History Show because we're going to tap into the world of crime in
Cool.
prisons. Do you have criminals in your family history? Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But we're going to find out how prison records can help you trace your family roots. And, we're giggling about this, but it can also be pretty sensitive. And you can probably find things that you're going to go, oh, I wish I never knew. But it will help you on your journey. And as always, on our third Friday Family History Show, we have Miss Holly T. Hansen, the Gen teacher and president of Family-History-Expos with us. And she has a whole article on prison records, and you can see it now on blendradioandtv.com, and get her other articles there. You'll see her in our expert department. And her article on this will also be in the fall issue of Big Blend Radio and TV magazine. We're trying to prompt her to do graveyards, too, for that issue, because, prison and graveyard stories sound good.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Miss Holly?
Hey, I'm happy. I'm here. I'm excited. This is a topic dear to my heart.
Oh, then you got to have some juicy stories too. And I do want to tell everyone to go to your website, Family-History-Expos.com, because you have some major events coming up, and I want to talk about that on today's show too. But yeah, I don't know if anybody goes through, their family history and doesn't somehow find out that somebody did a no-no in their past. I mean, because we're not all perfect, the human species.
Really?
Yeah. So the odds of finding something are pretty big,
well,
right?
People love to have a horse thief, They love to have infamous ancestors, unless it's their dad. Then it's not fun.
Then they have to be way back. They can't be people now that are still living.
It's more difficult to deal with the closer it is. That's true. It's true.
Wow. So where do you start with this? I mean, because I know we've talked about census records before, and all different ways to look at it, even like food. We've had all kinds of interesting conversations on how to dig up family history. Some of it is to actually just get an understanding, like we talked about before, on using art, and also marriage records and things like that. But where do you start in regards to looking, for prison records? And can that lead you to other stories in your family, other history?
It can. In the article, I've given 3 books. I've mentioned 3 books that cover really different aspects. And the first one is Bonded Passengers to America by Peter Wilson Coldham. And it's a multi-volume series of, England, they sent their prisoners to the colonies. And these became our upstanding great citizens, who became the forebears of the guys who fought the revolution. But it's a good one, and people were historically held in jail just until they were sentenced. They weren't sentenced to jail. They were sentenced to death or extradited out of the country, or they had to pay a fine.
Wow. And
the only people that were held in jails historically were debtors, and they couldn't get out until they paid their debt. And in order to clean the jails in England, they sent them to the colonies, whether it was to Australia or the Americas, or wherever they were sending people out to get them out of their hair.
Wow.
And,
that's like in Australia, isn't it? Botany Bay? Am I getting the right name, or have I've been?
I think England sent a lot of people to Australia.
Yeah, because they always said, anybody from Australia is a criminal, and I'm like, come on now. But because what about the Aborigines? Okay, but
look at what's a criminal, like being in debt. I mean, I don't know too many Americans who have zero debt. So we're all criminals. We're all going to Australia.
Yeah, most of the charges today would just be a misdemeanor. It would be nothing, but back then it was, you got sent to some remote place in America where the wolves could get you. It's scary. I think it would have been really
and then
scary.
And maybe you're going to be mixed up with someone who was like Jack the Ripper or something like that. You just I think those people
were sentenced to death. Those people were sentenced to death. They didn't come here. The people that were sent to Australia and to America were not murderers or hardened criminals, because those people, they had more than 100 reasons you could be sentenced to death. I mean, so the hardened criminals were just put out, and the misdemeanors were sent abroad, and that's how it was. So
what about Canada?
When they talk about these prisoners coming to Australia and to America, they weren't terrible people. I mean, you know, if they stole something from the market, they get their hand cut off.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. And some of the Arab countries do that.
Kenya did that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kenya,
Yeah.
It's like, here, you stole with this right hand, we're taking your right hand. If you steal the next time with your left hand, we're taking that one too. Yikes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they brand you. They did all kinds of things. But you can look in these books, Bonded Passengers. It gives you some history, so you can kind of get the feeling of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why did it happen, and who did they send, and how did that work? And then their list of names. It's a really great series.
See, we talked about Australia and then America, but what happened? You know, Nancy and I were talking about how, you know, there's always been the back and forth between you know, America and Mexico. You know, it's like right now we're sitting, you know, yes, we're in Arizona, but we're really in what was Mexico historically. But Canada, did England send prisoners to Canada too? Because it, you know, that kind of the history between America and Canada, we never really hear much about that, and you know, doesn't seem like.
It's the Americas. You'll hear it referred to as the Americas, and Canada was all part of that. You know, when the revolution happened, boundaries were defined.
Wow. Okay. So now, we're talking way back in the 1600s into the 1700s. Wow. And then
that's really early.
Yeah, because I mean,
then we've got United States
ahead.
penitentiary records, but you know, like I mentioned earlier, that there's jails. There's here in the United States, we have the county jail. We have there's just different jurisdictions of depending on your crime where you get sent. You have the state prison. You have federal prisons. And so
jail is
depending
different
on
than
where,
prison.
Jail
everything
where you're
has
in training
a little.
to go to prison.
And then you've got juvenile. You know, the juvie hole.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you've got to understand the jurisdictions and I mean, have you ever been on jury duty? Have you ever had to do that?
You know, as a business owner, we managed to get away from that.
We've been called.
I don't know how. You know, I was once called to be a juror for the federal court, and I told them I had an event going on, and it could cause me to really lose my business.
Yeah.
They said, find someone to cover for you. I had to show up.
Wow.
And,
well, you know, I always wanted, at the times that I didn't get out of it, they just canceled it. And it depended on where we were based, because we're the one place when we were living up in Julian, it's unincorporated up in the mountains. They couldn't, like, force people to drive over 2 hours to get there. They couldn't do that.
Right.
But I always wanted to, because I mean, that's just like life.
You should be careful what you say.
I mean, oh my gosh, I know. Don't listen. But it's fascinating because then you're seeing it go down, and what happens if you're like in a big case, you know?
Well, that's the problem. My friend Yvonne got stuck for 3 months.
Yeah, but did they give you pizza?
3 months.
They give you pizza.
I know, but 3 months she had to go.
I don't think they'll want us in there because we're media, and now they're kicking media out of the courtrooms. You're not allowed to go in there and film like they used to.
That's a good one, Lisa. You try.
I go in there and I'll, you know, write an article.
I take notes?
I'll blog it, you know. Okay, sorry. Let's go back to this. You're going back to jury duty. Sorry, we went off on a tangent.
Yeah. So when we're talking about prison records, and I like to expand that a little bit to criminal records. I maybe should have just put criminal records, but you have jurors, you have witnesses, you have all kinds of things going on. And what led me down this road to become interested in the first place is I was doing some research on my great-grandfather, on his family, and I had identified his siblings, and his sister was married to a guy named John Meyer. And so I'm reading in the docket, just the regular court records, and there was something in there about John Meyer being a juror for jury duty. And so I thought, oh, how interesting. I'm going to go look at the criminal courts and see if he, what happened. That's kind of interesting. Well, when I got into the criminal court records, there's my great-grandfather's name on this. He was up. Anyway, what happened, I never expected him to be I never expected my grandfather to be a criminal. I wasn't expecting that. No one ever told me that. But he was charged for shooting up the town, and he was sentenced to a year of hard labor at the state pen or a $100 fine. And I haven't yet discovered if he paid the fine or did the time. But that really opened my eyes to, hey, I would have never looked. I was looking for his brother-in-law, who was a juror.
So he came riding into town on a horse and shot up the town.
Where was it? What town? This is so cool.
It was in Augusta, Georgia, in 1895.
Yeah, he ran.
Oh my gosh!
He had a little bit too much of the little wine out of the jug, the wiggy, and rode into town.
The day he was sentenced. This is the part that's really heartbreaking and hysterical at the same time. He was being sentenced on the very day my grandmother was being born. So here my great-grandma is giving birth to a child, and her husband's in court being sentenced to a year of hard labor in the state pen for shooting up the town. And I thought, I knew my great-grandma. I was 15 years old when she died. I knew her well. And, man, wouldn't you have wanted to – I don't know if I'd have dared ask her because she was kind of feisty. I don't know if I'd have dared ask her what that was like, but I'm sure that was tough for her. She later divorced him. But I found those records, and I just think, now I always look. I when I'm doing research, I don't care. If there's a record type in the town where my ancestor lived in the time they lived there, I look. If it's a prison record, if it's anything. Because you don't know what they were up to. And if there was something not good going on, they're certainly not going to tell you.
Wow. And this is more important than looking at newspapers, too, because newspapers get inflammatory. So this is more important to look at the actual hard records, right, and to suss it to get the information. Wow. So I want to know, if any of my family went to the Yuma Territorial Prison, because I know our family floated here. We've talked about that on shows with you, Holly. So, would you, I'll have to go see here. We're sitting right here where all these prisoners were, and they even built their own cells, and these were the prisoners, everyone ended up here at the Territorial Prison. Frank Leslie.
Here's my assignment for you.
Uh-oh.
To go and find where are the records for that Yuma Territorial Prison. Are they there? Are
we
they
know exactly who to ask.
I know who to ask. We got connections.
That's your assignment.
You can see some of them of the more famous criminals, what's his name, Frank
Leslie. Buckskin.
Buckskin Frank.
Pearl Hart.
And Pearl Hart, they're attached in the museum. You can see the actual records. So they must have some.
Yeah, they must have some, but I think
they'll know where the originals are, whether those are copies or the originals themselves. They might be right there. You could go look.
They might be right here.
Most of the records I have dealt with have been in the county courthouse or in a federal repository.
Yeah, now we do have county courthouse, and we have a historical society here that keeps everything in a genealogical library thing that they have here. And, to me, Yuma is very fascinating because, the Territorial Prison here is the second highest attraction visited in the state of Arizona after the Grand Canyon. Isn't that amazing? Just because this is where everybody got put. And
it's where all their ancestors ended up.
Yeah, well, and we talked about it on a show. Our Senator Flake was put in here. Not him. He wasn't, but his grandfather was for polygamy. And instead of bailing the border to Mexico, he stayed and did his time. He did his time here. And then there's some famous people that ended up here that we didn't know. They just traced the roots. Tina Clark will know. The guy who owns the brewery here in town found out that his grandfather was in this prison. over a jail. Not he went to jail over a gambling debt or something where they had a shootout or something about gambling. It had to do with gambling.
Cool.
So I think this is cool, man. But you may find out that you've got like a rapist or a murderer. Like the worst criminal in this prison was a woman who sent her daughter and held her down to be raped. And so that was a woman who did that to her daughter.
And collected money.
When you find out, like, oh my gosh, I'm related, that's pretty tough to swallow.
It's pretty tough.
Just because you're related to somebody doesn't mean you're like them.
Mm-hmm. So do you prepare yourself when you start digging in, or are you just permanently prepared for anything to crop up now?
Well, at this point in time, nothing. I mean, I still can be shocked about things that I read. There was a lady that I helped one time, and her family name was Messer. Have I told this story before? The Messer family. And she was trying to find what had happened to some of her great-grandfather's siblings. She didn't know what had happened to them. So we started working on the project, and I'm like, this is the Hatfields and McCoys. This is the Messer, the gunman, This is the father of these children we're trying to find is Messer. And so I went and talked to her because this was tough. It was a horrible thing, And I took her aside. We had a group, and I said, it might be difficult to find these siblings because the reason that they're split up is what happened to their father. But do you understand that he was this person? And she said yes. She knew that. But she didn't tell us because she was afraid we wouldn't help her because he was such a, he did those things.
Wow.
And I said, oh, we'll help you. This is, because it's really important to pull that family back together. What that family must have gone through was, and we found them all. We did, and it was really cool.
Wow.
So.
Wow. Well, we had a McCoy, Michael McCoy. He emailed us because we ran a story in the Hatfield and McCoys. And he just went after us and said, "I'm a McCoy," and we won, not the Hatfields. And it was just one of these things. And I kept that email for years until not Dell, but Microsoft deleted all my emails. Remember that? And,
thank you, Microsoft.
I know. And watch out when you get tech support. Anyway, they did all my email, and I saved that email for years because it was just so funny. And I was like, "Well, do you want to come on a show and talk about it?" And he's just like, "No, we won." Yeah. And that's what you should be putting. And I'm like, okay.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't even remember the story. It was so long ago. But that's the thing. You find out these things. But, again, you say this all the time on the shows, that we have to remember that life was different back then and what people had to do to survive.
It is a foreign place. It really is. It really is. So I have, the other book, I'm going to come back about United States Penitentiary, but I want to mention the third. In there I have a book that I've mentioned that's called Wanted, U.S. Criminal Records, Sources and Research Methodology. And it tells you how to do things, and there's a lot of really good information state by state. It's a good little book to give you some information on how to find things in the U.S.
Yeah, because you said that when you go in, that not only are you getting, what they did, which of course is the first thing we all want to do, but they've got like medical records and fingerprints and all that cool stuff. So, when you get a fingerprint, can you utilize that in matching relatives at all, or is that really just for that one person?
Well, if they were in more than one prison.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah,
could be.
Oh, yeah, but then you're getting all the medical information and all of that stuff. And then do you get information on visitors if people came to visit them?
That's interesting.
Some of them do. Some of them do.
Wow, how cool
Some
is
of
that?
them do.
And then they bring a cake with a knife in it and all that.
Yeah, this book gives you a list of parole board registers, pardons, commutations, inmate registers, all kinds of things. It'll tell you for the different states what's available. And so that's kind of it's a good one. if you want to figure out what to do. It kind of helps you get a handle on what's going on in an area. And then the third book that I mentioned in the article is Criminal Ancestors, and this is it's a guide to historical criminal records in England and Wales by David Hawkins. Oh, wow. And he goes into prisons and prison life. There's an introduction, and it kind of gives you some historical information, criminal registers, calendars of prisoners, and then it goes into all the different courts, the quarter sessions, assize courts, the Old Bailey and Central Criminal Court, the Palatinate courts. And in every country, there are all these different courts, and you've got to figure out which ones to look at, like criminal lunatics, transportation to America, transportation to Australia. This is covered really good in this Criminal Ancestors book. There's just a lot of information. This book is like 500 pages.
Wow.
Got a lot of really good information in it.
A lot of information, and this is just it's fascinating to me because it also, the kind of crimes, like you were saying at the beginning, it could have been they were stealing a loaf of bread kind of thing, and through the crimes you start to find out what was life like, why were they committing those crimes, or maybe they were just like a sinister killer or something, but you just really find out, and the people that do get executed and things like that, are hanged. Do they have records at the prisons for that, or is that a separate? Yeah, because that's really the criminal records,
It really
right?
depends on the time period, the jurisdiction, what happened to the records. It's like a regular county courthouse. I've seen the records still in the county. I've seen them in museums. I've seen them sent to the state archives. They've been used for tinder to start fires. It depends on how old they are and what the law is in the area. Do they save them? Like this, when I was talking about in Augusta, Georgia, I wanted to go to the minutes of the actual court session, but those records had been approved to be destroyed, so all that was left was the dockets. So I could only see what he was accused of and what the sentence was. So I didn't get to see any of the testimony, which is unfortunate.
That's
so you don't know what you're going to get until you look, and it's different. It's different everywhere.
Wow, you've got some cool family history, man. All these different stories you've told. I mean, like, it's pretty crazy.
This is my next one. This is my next one that is really cool. This is really, really cool. I had been doing research, and I was using the census. And this has been many years ago, before the census for 1910, it wasn't indexed yet. And so I had to read it page by page, line by line. And I found my second great-grandfather, and it said he was the president of the American Masonic Federation.
Ooh.
And I thought that was kind of cool. And I knew where the Masonic Temple was in Salt Lake City, so I called him on the phone, and I said, hey, my ancestor was the president, and I'd like to make an appointment and come down and see, if you have any information on him. And the secretary goes, whoa, we don't have presidents. We have, what are they called? There's just popped out of my head.
I didn't do it.
I know. The leader of the
the head dude. Yeah.
The head guy. They're not presidents. They're called the Grand Masters. The Grand Master.
Oh, okay. That's
and
right.
I said, well, it was the census, and we know that census takers didn't always know. They might have just put it wrong. And she said, well, what was his name? Because I have the list of every Grand Master. And so I told her his name, and she said, no, he's not on the list. But she said, just a second, the historian's here today, and let me just ask him if he knows anything about this. And she was gone for, 3 or 4 minutes. It seemed like forever. But she come back to the phone and she said, Mrs. Hansen, our historian would like to interview you. And I'm like, what? Because I'm the one that knows, I know nothing. And she said, could you come down to the temple? So we made an appointment, and I was baffled. He didn't talk to me. He didn't come on the phone or anything. She just said he would like to see me if I'd come in person. And so I drove to Salt Lake, and I went to the temple, and he said, "Have you ever been here before?" And I said, "No, just outside. I've been, and it's a beautiful building." He said, "Well, I'd like to take you on a tour." So he took me on a tour of the whole temple. He showed me all the different rooms where they do all their ceremonies, and and he ended with the library. And they have a magnificent library. I mean, the whole thing is a theater where they do plays and stuff. And on the ceiling it has the constellations. And he turned the lights out and turned the constellations on. I got to sit in the chair. It was just awesome, and he treated me like I was some really important person. And it was lovely, and I just had a wonderful time. And then we went in the library, and he showed me this magnificent library of masonry. And he said, "Now over here," he said, "your grandfather was involved in masonry, and I'm going to talk to you about that when we get done. But here's his journals." And he had this whole shelf of journals written by my second great grandfather.
Wow.
And
cool.
And I thought that was cool. And he told me I was welcome to come and read them and look at them. I couldn't take them out of the building, but I could read them, and I could. If I wanted to make photocopies, I had to bring my own machine in to copy them, but I was welcome to do that. And so then he said, "Now I want to show you something else." And he took me back into the vault. They have a vault. And he said, "I
want to go to this building."
I know. If you come to Salt Lake, I'll take you there because it is a cool place. It is really cool. And he sat me down at this table at the vault. And he said, "We do keep records of our members." And he said, "I'm not really quite sure how to tell you this, but your ancestor was clandestine." And I just looked, at him because that didn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
Clandestine. And I could remember from growing up and being raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that there were some early saints that were Masons that became clandestine. So I didn't think that was bad because they were all leaders in our religion. I didn't feel like I just didn't understand what that word meant. And he looked at me and he said, "Well, clandestine in Masonry is similar to, say, being excommunicated from, kicked out."
Wow.
And I'm
like,
"Oh, okay. I'm getting the picture, I'm getting the picture." So what he did was this historian said, my ancestor started his own sect of Masonry. He started his own thing. He'd come from Scotland. He was an immigrant, and it was the American Masonic Federation. He'd started his own thing, and he had groups going all over the country. He had them in Europe and South America, and he said that he was the Scottish Rites Masons from Scotland weren't happy. They didn't like what he was doing because he was getting a huge following. And anyway, they took him years. They were after him. It took him years, but they finally got him into federal court. They they charged him with defrauding people by using the mails to defraud, which is a federal crime. And what he did was, when you become a Master Mason, you get a certificate, and he would mail the certificates. And what they took him to court, and they proved that he wasn't legit to do it, and so he was defrauding people, using the mail to defraud. And this guy said, "Someone needs to write this other side of the story," because I knew the man from the family side, and how loved he was, and what revered. My own father was named after him, and my dad was born after this person. He went to prison after he came out. My dad was born, and they named him. He can't be a bad guy. Would you name your child after a bad guy? I can't imagine that you would, So we're having this little discussion. Well, he brought this little box out, and he goes, "I want to show you. These were things that were used as testimony against him during the trial." He had this box, and he brought it out, and it had Daughters of the Eastern Star. I don't remember exactly, but it had these
Yeah,
little pamphlets, of which he
Mhm.
wouldn't let me really look at them. He said because they were private things. He just let me see like the cover, but I couldn't read them because I had to be part of that group in order to actually see them, which I understand that was their private stuff, you know. But he showed me these different pieces of literature that were created, and then he had a pen that was my grandfather's, and he said this was his pen. And then the very last thing that he pulled out of the box was a pair of handcuffs.
Wow.
And he said these are the handcuffs that they cuffed him when they took him. And right at that very moment, I don't know how this works, that your imagination or a flashback of something that you've never seen because it happened before I was born, but I could see him with those handcuffs behind his back. It just flashed through my mind, and he was 77 years old. And I wept. You know, I just thought, oh, how heartbreaking. And he said to me, he said, this was a precedent-setting case. And if he had won, he would be the grand poobah of all masonry in the United States today. But because the way the case went, he lost everything. And I was, he said, somebody needs to write the other story. He said, I wished I had met you because I just finished last week writing a history of your grandfather. And he gave it to me, gave me a copy of it. He'd made it. And it's all about what a bad guy he was. And he said, I feel like you should write the other side of the story so that people would know. Well, then I went on the internet and I did all these searches, and there's all these things that people have written about him. He's the kind of guy that people in as Masons love to hate him, because what he did from that perspective of,
wow,
you know, he could have broken up Masonry as we know it today. But
that was a big deal. That's a big deal because you know they have all these. I mean, it's like you have to be
secretive.
They're so secretive. I watched a documentary on them though. They do a lot of drinking, but and we have friends in it, and they're heads of everything all over the place and travel and do a lot
George
of good
Washington
things.
was a Mason. I mean, it's deeply ingrained into our country.
I want to know more
about
the
it.
Skull and Crossbones thing.
I think they're the same.
The Skull and Crossbones Society, doesn't that get interestingly weird? Like,
but aren't they the same?
Yes, yeah.
That's what I thought.
It's the same.
That's what I thought.
It's the same kind of a society. It is. So I studied, as I got ready to leave that day, this gentleman said, the trial, the prosecuting attorney wrote a book about the trial.
Whoa. Wow.
And so I got a copy of the book, and I own it.
Wow.
And I got a copy of the book, and I read the whole trial. Well, the very first page, the prosecuting attorney, his first thing that he writes, he says, this is an unbiased story. This is the unbiased truth of this court action. Well, unbiased when you're the prosecuting attorney? Are you joking? How can that be unbiased? I just laughed. But I read through the whole thing, and it was all footnoted and the sourced and documents, and I have studied it, and it was a sad thing. So I had this aunt that was in her 90s. She was actually my great-grandfather's brother's wife, and I had discovered her through doing research. I had gone and visited her. She'd given me pictures of this guy, of my ancestor, and told me how wonderful and how much she loved him. And I found all this out. I went back to visit her. I said, did you know this? And she just sat back in her chair, and she said, yes, but I didn't tell you because I was afraid you would never come and see me again. And she said, I was afraid you would not like him, and he was a good man. And then she told me all these good things about him. And I thought, yeah, he was a good man, and he made a mistake, and he did some things he shouldn't have done, and somebody used it as a precedent-setting case. No one else would have gone to prison for it, but he was successful, so he did. And guess where they sent him?
Where?
He went to Leavenworth.
Oh, wow.
No way.
Ancestor. Yes, he spent time in Leavenworth. And I got his prison. Well, I wrote for that Freedom of Information Act. I wrote trying to get the records. I couldn't get them. And in 2008, I was in Kansas City at a big genealogy conference, and Tim Rives and Steve Spence were archivists for the National Archives and Records Administration in the Central Plains region, which is in Kansas, and they were teaching a class. So I went to the class because their specific topic was on the United States Penitentiary Leavenworth inmate case files, 1895 to 1952. And I think he was sentenced in 1922. I think that was the year. And so I'm like, I'm going to go to that class. And I had this feeling that when they showed these case files, my ancestor was going to be up there, right? So I went into the class, and of course, they talked about their infamous prisoners, such as Robert Stroud, who is the Birdman of Alcatraz.
Alcatraz, yeah.
George Machine Gun Kelly, right?
Yeah, Machine Gun Kelly.
So
yeah.
He spent time there, and the polar explorer, Dr. Frederick Cook, the labor leader, Big Bill Haywood, the boxer, Jack Johnson, and Fanny Bryce's husband, Nicky Arnstein, and Native American activist Leonard Peltier. And they talked about that there were lesser-known prisoners with thousands of records, and they were incarcerated for a period of a few months to a few decades. And my ancestor was there. I waited till it was over. I went up and talked to Tim Rives, and I told him my story, just a snippet of it. I didn't tell you as long as I did for you guys, but he said, we've got the records. Give me his name and his dates. I had all the information. I gave it to him. And when I got home he called me on my cell phone. He called me on Monday, or the next day, maybe it was Friday, because he taught the class on Thursday. He called me, and he said, it's going to cost you $40 for the whole file. I said, okay, and I sent a check. When I got home from that trip, I had a package in the mail. It had his mugshot, his fingerprints, his hospital. It had his description of, it told moles and scars, and it had his visitor's log. Now, this was really his wife. They're not allowed, prisoners' families were not allowed to move to Leavenworth. It's a small place. Still, they have signs like that. They don't let you there. And she could only see him once a month, and she took the train once a month from Salt Lake City to Leavenworth to visit him. And she went every single month he was incarcerated. She went there to see him. And on the list, it had all these different people who'd gone to see him. And my grandfather had gone to see his grandfather.
Wow.
And so that was amazing information.
Well, this ties back. It's interesting, with us being here with the territorial prison, and that kind of these there's the prisons that have had the mob and all of these guys in, right? But like here in Yuma, so we have the historic Coronado Motor Hotel where we're at right now, and you've been here, and so they had a lot of people come in and check in over the years because it was the wedding capital, and now my mind is like. And we always look at tourism, right? So there's medical tourism, there's history tourism, roots travel and tourism, right? But I never thought about prison tourism. And so now, how many people came out to go and see their people in the prison?
Yeah.
Oh, lots of them. They're all listed, every one of them. It's pages. It's pages.
Well, she has Dog the Bounty Hunter here.
Yes,
there were people who came. This is really interesting, and you want to know about this because there were people who came to interview my grandfather that wrote newspapers, and I'm sure they went back, like from Michigan. They were interested in him, and they came and interviewed him. I haven't looked it up yet, but their name's there, and he came to interview him because he was writing a piece because he was famous. You know how they do these documentaries on prisoners?
Yeah,
and they talk to them.
Yeah.
And so there's more to find. I haven't found it all yet.
Gosh,
I keep finding stuff on this guy.
Well, Kansas is cool, too, to go. I want to go out that way because, like you were saying, Machine Gun Kelly, he ran rampant out there. And then, the author, Barbara Casey, wrote about his wife, Catherine Kelly, and she She told him what to do. She ran him. She was the boss.
Yeah.
And when you
Do you
start
want me
going
to tell you about visiting Leavenworth? Do you want me to tell you about that?
Oh, you went there? Yeah.
I did. I went there. I was with a friend, and I said, she had. We went out there over Memorial Day, and she had ancestors buried in the military. There's the federal pen, Leavenworth, and then there's also a military prison. There's two different prisons there, and then they have a military graveyard that doesn't have anything to do with the prison. It's just where soldiers could be buried, and to honor them. And so she had a grandfather buried in the cemetery who had fought in I think it was the Civil War, but I'm not sure. But so we went there and took flowers and put on his grave, and then we drove over to the federal penitentiary where my grandfather had been, and it's this humongous, ominous building. And when we drove through the gates, just this cloud of doom, it's just like this feeling of, oh, this is not a good place, It was sad. And we drove in there, and then there's this huge staircase, huge staircase that goes up the front of the building. I don't know. 100 feet. I don't know, 200 feet. It's big. And I wanted to go sit on there and have Pat take my picture. So we drove through this little spot and parked, and all these alarms went off, and lights started flashing. And we're like, what? Is there having a prison break,
Prison break, you did it.
These officers come and they surround us, and they're like, what are you doing? Well, we were just going to take a picture. Goes, well, this is unauthorized area. You can't be here. And they made us leave. So I didn't even get a picture of the prison at all because it scared us so bad. We just got out of there and left.
We'll get there. I'm going there now. I'm going there. Putting it on the list. I'm going there.
That is funny.
That is funny because when those big sirens go off, I'd probably wet my pants.
Yeah,
honestly.
Really. It's like what?
I
there's like
feel my heart rate. Let's see, I've got my Fitbit on. My heart rate's over 90. Just from remembering.
Wow, that I know who needs CrossFit. Just go to a prison.
Yeah.
So
So
that was that was a cool experience. But in those records too, it told that he became a librarian. This grandfather of mine who wrote all these books and was an avid reader, and he could speak 5 languages fluently, and he was a very educated man, but he became a librarian. And so all that information I learned about him, and I have a deep and abiding love for the guy, and he's been a very intriguing, interesting person to research. And even though I know when he was born and when he died, and I know lots about him, I just keep finding more things, and it's fascinating to me. I can't learn enough about him.
So the crime that he committed, would it be a crime today? I'm not really sure. I'm not quite getting exactly what he did.
This is the crime he committed. He committed fraud. Yeah, you can go to jail for fraud.
Yeah, because of the mail. He used the mail.
They
could not stop him from what he was doing. They couldn't. Everyone that I've talked to about it that's in law, and even the historians from the Masonic Temple said it was trumped up charges, and he was using as an example. It was about money.
Yeah.
It was about money.
And
he was successful. And he was successful, and that they were losing people because they liked him. And so
so he just really took their.
It's like starting your own religion
and starting your. Well, I don't see a crime in that.
It's like saying, "Hey, I'm going to do this." It's like working with somebody in an organization and saying, "I'm going to do this better." It's an entrepreneur.
Yeah, why can't you start your own church?
Yeah,
Lots
you can.
People do.
People start their own churches every day.
He took people from somebody else's church, but so what?
And used the mail.
He also claimed that he had the right to do it. So he didn't just start it from nothing. He had claimed to be a master mason in Scotland and come here, and he said he had the keys, the rights, whatever. Anyway, in the court, I read the whole thing, and I could see he probably told a couple of lies. He probably did. And those two little lies, even if it was only one little lie that he told to say he was legit, put him in prison. And he didn't do anything heinous or terrible, but Leavenworth and that place. And he survived. He did he did not get out early. He did his full time. And his wife went there every month. And family members went to see him. And it put him out of business. I mean, he lost everything.
Wow.
He fought.
Wow, what a story.
He went to trial. And it's a precedent-setting case. But we all know that there are people in prison who shouldn't be there. We all know that people get accused of crimes they didn't do. Right. And people get set up. But this was about money and power, and the people who the judge. The judge he had to recuse himself from the trial because he was a Mason. So they brought somebody in from someplace else.
Wow.
But the prosecuting attorney in his foreword and introduction to the book is, of course, I'm the granddaughter, right? So I'm biased too. But his bias was so staunch that it was like, how could you even say you're writing an unbiased detail when you're the prosecuting attorney? That's not even possible.
The other day I read that
not even possible.
We have more people in prison in this country than any other country in the world, and you know sometimes you got to sit back and think about that.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. We got to look. I mean, it's a money-making thing, especially now with private prisons. Holly, good story. I want to remind everybody about your Let Your Light Shine 2019 International Family History Expo. This is so cool. August 5th through 10th. So this is global family history, which, of course, family history is. You know, we're all connected somewhere, right? So this is all online. So if everybody goes to Family-History-Expos.com, they can. When does the registration open and all of that good stuff?
It's open now. People can register now.
Okay.
And if you register for the whole thing, you get all the handouts, and our handouts are usually anywhere from 4 to 20 pages for each class. And you get the replay. You can listen to them over and over and over. Now we broadcast it. We broadcast it when it's live. We broadcast live, and anyone can listen to the live session, and that's free. But if you want to get the helps, the research guide, handouts, and be able to watch classes over and over. And if you buy the whole thing, you get all the classes. It's not physically possible for someone to watch every single class we do.
Right.
So we do so many classes that, if you've got to sleep, you've got to work, you've got to do some things. And so you can come back, and if you purchase it, you can listen to them anytime in the future because they don't expire. You can just listen to them. The ones you can't catch because you're at work or you're sleeping or you've got family over, you can still listen to it another time.
Awesome.
But
so everyone,
the
again,
live broadcast is
August 5th through 10th. Yeah, so that part. So everyone, Family-History-Expos.com. It's really super cool. And you've got, the experts, I know we've had them on shows, just a wealth of knowledge. So definitely, I know we always have fun and, tell stories and everything here, but this is more of that in-depth part. So go check it out at Family-History-Expos.com. And then November 18th through 23, you're going to have Family History Library Research Retreat. And that's going to be back in Salt Lake City, or is that completely online too?
Salt Lake City. That'll be in Salt. We will broadcast the classes, and that'll be online. So you have the opportunity to sign up for the retreat in Salt Lake where you come and you physically sit in the classroom with us, and then we go in the library and help you with your research. Or if you can't make it to Salt Lake, you can listen to the classes.
Okay.
So it's both.
Okay, excellent. So everyone, again, Family-History-Expos.com is the place to go, and you can read Holly's article. Just go to blendradioandtv.com. You'll find Holly in our expert department, and you can click from there to her different articles and interviews. And also you'll see it in the fall issue of Big Blend Radio and TV, Big Blend Radio and TV magazine. So thank you so much for joining us, Holly. Always fun, and you know we always like to give you some music, right? Play some music for you. And since we're talking about crime and prison records, I'm thinking we got to talk about people that are running from the law. So this song is called "Run, John, Run," and it's by Blind Lemon Pledge, and it's from his album. You can go to blindlemon-pledge.com. It's from the album Pledge Drive, so check it out, everyone. So go to blindlemon-pledge.com. But here it is, "Run, John, Run." Thanks so much for joining us, Holly.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too, man. Keep digging into those stories,
go to
man.
The prison.
I know. I want to go make a movie on this now. All right, here it is. "Run, John, Run."
Run, John, run, racing to the cornfield. Run, John, run, you best not stay. Run, John, run, hiding in a canebrake. Run, John, run, night riders on the way. Girl Scout Katie and Baby Joe, you got to protect them. Daddy Zeke and Auntie Flo, gotta keep them safe, gotta keep them safe, gotta keep them safe. Run, John, run, down to the river. Run, John, run, hear what I say. Run, John, run, dashing through the woods now. Run, John, run, night riders on the way. Ain't gonna work their farm no more, not since abolition. Won't be no slave to the company store. It's a whole new day, it's a whole new day, it's a whole new day. Run, John, run, heading for the border. Run, John, run, you're gonna get away. Run, John, run, the gates of Zion calling. Run, John, run, night riders on the way. Run, John, run.